part of that work has been looking at mapping the open orchards that are in Nelson and Tasman, but I've been focusing on Nelson. And so this, my research has kind of been a stepping stone into the creation of the Whakatū Food Sovereignty Project, which we're going to talk about today.
Okay. So I'll give you a moment to read that to kind of sum up what it is that the project aims to do in its essence, with the important word here being embryonic. This is not an existing project. This is an idea for a project that we want to make happen. We want to bring together resources and people to create this, but it's not actually up and running and functioning yet. But yeah, the idea is that it uses the space of the open orchards that are already existing in order to actually get greater value out of the resources that are already there.
What's an open orchard?
I'm glad that you asked. So both Nelson and Tasman councils have planted up many areas of public land with numbers of fruit and nut trees, and this has been roughly over the last 20 years, and it's a little bit of a case of a kind of inspired moment in council where they had some really forward-thinking people and they had some resources and they made a thing happen that's kind of now out there in the community and now isn't really sustained, and the value of the actual kind of community connection point that these spaces could be is not really coming into fruition. So the idea is that we would like to use the amazing resource that is there and expand the food resiliency opportunity that it gives by making an open orchard programme. We capitalise that as though it's like an OOP, open orchard project, just using the open orchards in a constructed, I should say structured way. So the basic idea is that we get together a core group of volunteers that contribute to the maintenance and the harvest of these spaces, and funnel that out into the community, mainly through Pātaka, but with the work of a paid coordinator and some other bits of basic infrastructure that will be needed to make that run. But yeah, that's the basic idea behind it. Just a note on the currently not well looked after thing. They are technically maintained under council contract, which is now out to Green by Nature, if anyone's aware of the kind of situation in Whakatū with the green spaces management. So yeah, it's contracted out to Green by Nature to look after, and we have information from them, although not detailed, but to say that they're not sprayed. So they are technically maintained at a very superficial level, and they're not sprayed. So that's the kind of starting point that we're at with them. Okay,
I was just going to say that I believe there were heritage varieties planted.
Some of them I think were, yeah. There's a number of projects and programs that kind of were implemented over the past 20 years, and so some were just healthy eating and some were helping maintain those heritage varieties. Yeah.
Just one question.
Yeah.
You said not sprayed. Is the ground around them?
All we got told was, we said, are they sprayed? They said no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that the trees?
People got a lot of
The trees are not sprayed. But
The trees are not sprayed, but we don't have information about the surrounding area, and we don't yet have information on that.
and that's part of the management.
Yeah. So I mean, we do just want to say first, we're not fully across the whole history of who was involved in the past 20 years of planting these trees. There's been a lot of amazing people who have obviously done incredible work, and this is not about stepping on toes. This is not about taking any form of this has been incredible work that other people. It's just about integrating scattered community efforts into something a bit more organised and utilising an amazing resource that's currently not well utilised. So there's currently, because I'm the mapping person, there's currently 3 versions of 3 maps available. So one of these edible walks that the Nelson City Council have out, and so I did a survey for asking people what they thought of these maps. It's an interesting one. So these are the edible walk maps. There is then also a big Google map that was also created. This was done by the general public, and it was it was published in 2016. It's had over 180,000 views, which is pretty amazing. In the Nelson region just itself, there's 500 fruit and nut trees that have been planted. All of these maps are outdated. They are not. This is not the current state of it. We don't know what the current state of it is. I live in Stoke, and I know that there has been a ton of planting down Orchard Stream that's not represented on any of the maps. And then some people will say, well, that tree is absolutely not there. So there. And then this one is also a hilarious one because someone said that a tree was there and then is now a petrol pump. So I don't know. You know, these are the fun things about maps. So it's the first starting point we hope to do would be to work with the community to map all of the current trees. So a massive community mapping project. I'd love to work with the council on how we do that, if it could be through like a field map or something like that, so that we can get all of that data, get it updated, and then that would be the first step of our whole thing, because there's no point. And it's an interesting one as well, because with Green by Nature, they don't know what trees are out there because the trees are not well mapped, and the council has told me that they know that they don't have an up-to-date map. So it's definitely the first step, is the mapping. Yes.
So a little bit more detail about the practicalities of making a scheme like this work. So as I said, the coordinator would be a paid role, and they would be responsible for bringing together those volunteers, recruiting them, doing all the volunteer kind of comms and interpersonal stuff, and organising the ops on the ground. So maintenance and picking are the two key things involved in these areas. So the maintenance is around pruning and care for those trees and a little bit of the immediate space around, and then picking them at the right time of year. Then with the harvest that is produced from those areas, the idea is that existing and new pātakakai could be used to distribute that to the local community. The ideal that we're thinking about is that we would have new pātakakai built right by the orchard areas, so that there's a for-purpose, right on the spot location that people can access the kai from, because otherwise transport becomes an issue and it's more complex. But that's the basic idea. So the idea behind the mapping being so crucial is that in order to keep track of so many trees, probably more than 500 by now, in all of the areas, and knowing what care they need at what time of year, the mapping is really essential to that. It would also then, as Kelli said, through a potential app, it then becomes more of a public resource beyond just the work of one volunteer community group. It becomes something that's accessible to people outside of being involved in this project. The idea behind the preserving classes there is that we often get a glut from fruit and nut trees, and it's something that is just way too much for people to use at that given moment of harvest. So preserving would be one answer to that. The idea with doing a class and a learning space with that is that there can be a skill and knowledge exchange, and that's a real community builder. Yes?
Just a question about the mapping. Okay. So obviously you'd also need volunteers or paid staff to keep that up to date, because, like you said before, they get out of date. And does the council have existing asset management mapping of these trails?
Yeah. So they have the existing ones. So there are three types. I hadn't shown the third, which is exactly that one. But when I spoke to the council, they said these are out of date and we need to update them.
The council's one.
The council ones feed into those edible walk maps, and then the Google Maps kind of does too. They kind of link up together. Their asset management of it's not great at the moment. But it's definitely something that would need to be continued to be updated.
Obviously in Nelson they can go through long dry periods in the summer and the autumn. Is there a strategy in place to keep the trees watered?
As in an existing one by the contractors that are looking after them.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Or is somebody doing it?
I don't know if that's part of what the contractors do for looking after those areas. We've got quite a beefy list of questions for finding out what's actually going on with the maintenance. That would be one of them.
We can't scare them away too quickly.
We didn't really want to come to them and say, oh, hey, we've got a plan to use all the spaces you've been maintaining. So that's a bit of a delicate bridge that we'll have to cross.
It's an essential bridge.
It is.
Yeah. But the question of the irrigation available in those areas is an important one, because I think that what the maintenance contracting teams do doesn't necessarily involve care for specific, trees like that. So yeah, irrigation would be an issue. Yeah.
Just knocked them, but hey, my question really is about council. So it was going back to what was said earlier, but it ties in. So does council? What does this hang on in council? So the open orchards things, they've got these trees, they maintain it. Is that part of the food resilience policy? Do they have something like that?
As looking.
Or am I already speaking to
Do you?
No, you are.
I don't.
Okay, so I think that, well, I don't know where it sits currently, but just recently council did the climate action strategy, and Kai resilience sits under that. So I assume that this should sit under the climate change team and the environment biodiversity teams connected to all the contractors as well.
It's definitely it's an interesting one, because when I've spoken to some of climate change, and they've sort of said no, it's a waste minimisation one. So I think at the moment because it's not a priority, but now that it's under the Kai resilience thing, maybe we can into there.
I think
that
makes
more sense.
It's currently under parks because it's contracted out to Green by Nature, so it's currently sitting under like amenity and horticulture rather than Kai. So parks would be the current department. So benefits, I'm sure you can already think of loads already, but in case you didn't know, it's good for food sovereignty. It helps all the locals get access to fresh local foods. That's the buzzword here, that's what we're about. And then, as I said, this idea of feeding into disaster resilience. So we know that one of the key weak points, especially with transport links around this part of Aotearoa, is that supermarket chain gets busted really quickly, and as we know, they've got somewhere in the region of 3 days worth of food. And although in theory we live in a food bowl producing area, that doesn't necessarily mean that when a disaster hits there's actually lots of Kai there available for people quickly. We also think that for the disaster resilience side of things, that foods from the open orchards could be complemented by other items that actually create a more functional pātaka, because pātaka is still stocked with, plum jam is not really a disaster resilient food situation. That's a very small amount of the kind of general foods that you'll be needing. So
we're just roll for desserts.
In that situation, we're thinking about other long life foods, canned goods, and potentially an opportunity here for sponsorship. So there's, as we know, big companies doing canned long life foods that could be sponsoring these pantries, providing goods to them, and then helping to finance the programme. And then also the obvious points about community building, that these plots of land are in people's neighbourhoods, they're key meeting points, they're green spaces. The activity of looking after them and also harvesting from them and spending time with them is very obviously a great community building initiative. One more thing on the disaster resilience is that Kelli perhaps can speak a little bit more to this, but in terms of networks of responders for a disaster situation, volunteers that are aware of where these micro pantries are and the trees and all the rest of it could also be potentially part of a standby disaster response team. There are formalised versions of such networks in other parts of the country and also abroad that we can take examples from as well.
How to finance it. Joyful one that I get. Ideally, we would like to start out umbrellaed by a larger organisation. We don't want to just dive straight into that world of the not-for-profit running your own thing. So yeah, ideally it would be umbrellaed in the beginning. Financial sustainability, as we all know, is an issue, and we don't want to just become another competitor in the grant game, because I already work in that, so don't want to deal with that. So the corporate partnerships, as Luisa said, possible contributors could be PICs or waddies, and then they could. It's like a branding exercise for them. They get to put their things out there. We give them big shout outs. It's that sort of thing. Another side of it could be a social enterprise of gardening, so offering gardening services for volunteers to individuals. So that really especially ties into the people who maybe has their own house but doesn't have the time to maintain their own garden. Getting a not-for-profit to come in and help maintain your garden. It's like a nice thing. They get first pick of their own food, pay us a little bit of money for the service, and then if there's any leftover food, it goes into the park.
That's a good idea.
Thanks. And then advertisement revenue through the app. So the mappings would be put onto an app. We could have a free version which has a few ads on it, which helps pay for a little bit of revenue coming through, or you get a subscription version with no ads. The app, we'd also like to have not just like, this is a tree, this is an apple tree. You'd want to be able to say, this is when the apple tree is ready, this is how you prepare it, this is how you know how to pick it, those sorts of things. In my survey, for example, that I asked people, some people were like, I don't know what a quince is, I've never heard of these things. So we need to, as part of food sovereignty, address everybody has the ability to know what food it is and how to cook it and how to use it. And then obviously there would be probably some grants, and I think to start with grants would be how we would really get our seed funding through, council support, trusts, whatever. Yeah, so. The other thing, is this my next one? Oh yeah, potential challenge. So funding sustainability is always a potential challenge for any non-for-profit. Another potential challenge would be the existing community use of the orchards. We really don't want to be stepping on toes, and I think there's always going to be an interesting thing around who feels like they own that tree, even though maybe it's it's not on their land, but it's this idea, well, I've been coming here for 10 years, and then if we came along and, I don't know, chopped up something or moved some fruit around, there would be an interesting, it's just a potential challenge that is there. And another thing that came up in my survey, and I imagine people who are in the community garden space see a lot, is the idea of people aren't putting in any effort, but they're taking away the goods, and that came up in the survey. And it's an interesting one because these trees are not maintained by anyone, and they're not, but people still said it in the survey that they felt like people were taking too much of the food that wasn't necessarily, that they shouldn't be. So these are just sort of things that I think we'd need to figure out. We'd have to have values on. We'd need to have proper, understanding of how to go about it. And then the other one is rats, which is just an interesting one because anytime I've brought this up with anyone outside of the food resiliency space, they go, those open orchards, they just bring rats, which is a really negative view of them, and it's not something that, it's just and a lot of people in the council seem to believe that they don't provide any resource, the fruit drops to the ground, which brings rats. And obviously the whole idea would be that the fruit wouldn't drop to the ground and rot. We would fix that issue for you.
Have you seen a problem with rats?
I haven't, but it's definite. I've heard it from three different people that these open orchards just bring rats. So
you'll find it's a lot more than rats. But possibly good things. You feed birds.
No, exactly.
Food source. But the more you use it, the less rats there'll be. So.
No, exactly.
And to what degree it is a practical problem or a perceived problem is still an issue, because if people are still believing that it's a rat issue, whether it is or not, it has to be addressed.
Sure.
Absolutely right.
Okay, so some other challenges / opportunities. Volunteer recruitment. We know that we have a large demographic of potential volunteers in the Nelson Tasman region, which is fantastic. But that has also strings attached to it in relation to this project, because there's issues of kind of consistency, of getting enough people over a long enough period of time to be committed to actually keep it going, because it's something that would essentially be relying on volunteer work power. And there are organisations such as Kai Rescue that run an enormous project shifting tons of food every month with about 50 volunteers, and it works as though they were paid employees for the effectiveness of the service they're delivering. So that's an incredible example of how it is possible, but it still means that it is a challenge to build such a workforce and to maintain such a workforce, and to also have people that are physically able to do some of the harder jobs involved in that, potentially, the pruning and things. Vandalism, not necessarily a huge issue, but we have seen it happen that Pātaka kai can be vandalised and things can be stolen rather than used. I think there is a bit of a line that sometimes there is issues about fair share, but sometimes there is outright vandalism that is just like removing a load of assets or materials in one go, which has been seen to happen occasionally with Pātaka kai. Also to the trees themselves. Again, touching on the point of what could go into micro pantries that would actually provide some balanced nutrition would be a relevant thing to address for the micro pantries, because they're not going to be effective if they're just using the kai that's from the open orchards, because they won't actually be a useful resource at the time of a disaster. So making sure that there's balanced kai available there. And then food preservation is it's a lovely idea, but there's a lot of practicalities around that. You need a safe space. It would probably have to be, because of kai going into public consumption, it would be commercial kitchen standards. There's a lot of strings attached to that, which don't mean that they're obstacles, but they're things that would have to be considered and addressed to make it viable and safe. Hold on to the questions and we'll come back to them.
Fantastic for a super way through this quite complex idea and project. It's curious because it's very similar to the vision that I'd love to set up, and so that's part of the idea of networking. Why do I do this in silo, or why did we as Golden Bay do it in silo when we can do it exactly and someone solves that problem and then they've done that, so then we can focus on this problem, we share that information to you. So it's a really wonderful way of why we're here.
I just wanted to let you guys know that the climate change grant at Nelson City Council is open at the moment for $50,000. You probably know, but the adaptation side of it is kind of what your pitch obviously would be, because it is for adaptation as well. So I'd be happy to help you guys as well.
For that, we would need to be umbrella. Or no?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You would need someone to. Yeah, you could even do it through my business if you
okay.
Because you could put it under. I don't know.
Or the Climate
Forum,
TET.
Tasman Environmental Trust.
Cool.
But that was my first thing, and it's open till the 7th of December, so there's a bit of time to get. It's not a rush, hopefully. And then I just put about the rat problem. You said that there is a conception around food waste and rats being a problem. And I thought that could be a cool idea to connect with the trapping groups.
Of course.
Bring together the trapping network around, because then you could have the argument to people that say this is causing rats, and you can say, well, we're working with local trappers.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because actually you're reducing any
Yeah.
perceived rat problem.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
reducing. Not only would you be working with local trappers, because now we're managing it better, but we're
Yeah.
also removing the food, which is the source of that.
Yeah. But it would be cool to have the trapping to just be like, getting rid of it because they're on the tree.
Yeah, and here's the other funny thing. It's a strange one here, because you talked about having the fruit, and it's sort of only one part of, it's the fructose part of the not necessarily so healthy. Well, the healthy part of, you said fruit, but I know that open orchards is also nuts. But of course, nuts is definitely attractive.
Right.
However, nuts are protein and carbs, and but so it could be you're pulling the rats away from somewhere else to the orchard, potentially, but then they're getting trapped. And you're supplying protein to them.
They tend to not go into the traps when there's other abundant food.
I bet
But I'm
that's
sure
right.
the trapping networks know how to
Oh,
deal with that
I'm
better
sure
than we
they
do,
do.
so they can provide their expertise.
Like my other point was about community, other who else is in the space, and you touched on that too. And I mean, community gardens, there's a few, there's not heaps in Nelson, but school gardens.
Yep.
I might be a little bit down track, but if you look at that's like expanding the trees or what's not there, increasing variety.
Yeah, that would be the absolute dream.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It would be a really natural follow-on expansion, and also to complement the varieties that have already been planted and to try and expand and get more of that diversity, which also brings in the disaster resilience, because certain types of disaster will take out certain crops more than others. And as was also mentioned, with the potential income stream to be offering a social enterprise gardening service, that would also kind of fall into that bracket of potential expansion. And there are a few schemes. I don't actually know of any in Aotearoa, but there are a few examples around the world of kind of gardening in other people's plots. So people that don't have a garden or that are workers like volunteers also use other people's gardens to grow.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
You do? Yeah.
I haven't checked it.
Yeah.
There's an orchard there too.
Do you know if the council do they have actual records of what specific varieties? Or?
As far as I can tell, no. Their maps just say it's country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
I
Bill Sayers,
think-
is any information from Bill Sayers? He was one of the volunteers that spent many years farming.
No.
Yeah, his name has been raised.
Yeah.
I've heard his name, and I think that because of the interconnectedness of the local community, I think it will be possible to probably find the people that know. So a bit of detective work there. I think we can probably find that information.
There's another little so we often grow fruit trees and they're grafted, they're clones, so they're what they were to start with, that particular variety, that sport, if you like. There's also a space to look at locally adapted varieties that have popped up and find sources of those and grow them, which are less likely, if they've survived without any tending, then they're less likely to need extra input. I mean, so you get a better product and you don't have the issue of waste from the fact that they simply get diseased. It was just an idea. We get caught on the whole grafting thing, but I mean, obviously seed saving or growing from fruit is a longer term process. But if you've got something that's established, then to me that's building on real resilience, because some of the varieties. So I asked you that question about heritage. Some of them, more modern varieties simply aren't great food. So that would be another. It's a little bit different, but it's like this is an ongoing. You keep planting because all the trees you're planting. Some have died. Well, that's just what happens. If we think we plant orchards and they're going to be there forever, they simply live and die.
Yes.
Just trying to clarify for myself. You two focused on waste, right?
No,
Waste is part of it, but that I wouldn't say is the main focus. It's about high resilience and local food more than it is about waste. But you can't retract waste from that whole picture because it's part of it.
It's a resource, isn't it? Cool.
Just another idea that's floating in my mind is crowdfunding. I feel like Nelson would. I feel like if this was shared more widely with people in Nelson, because it's so tangible and obvious, like what you're trying to achieve, I feel like it could be really supported by local people. So crowdfunding could be another resource of funding. And like you said, PICs and the supermarkets, but also individuals as well.
Definitely. I've been really, because I had a survey out and I was shocked at like how many people actually responded to it, because you kind of put these little things out and not expect much back. But there was a lot of interest of people wanting to be in it, and then like it ended us up here. So
how many people?
I had 50 responses. which for a little old survey is pretty, it
That's
wasn't
good.
widely advertised. And everyone was really like, wow, either they'd heard about it but they knew the maps weren't up to date, or they'd never heard about it and they were super keen. And next Saturday we're doing an edible bike tour of some of the orchards.
Oh, that's a great idea. I saw
Yeah.
that on the Climate Forum going, yeah, that's such a good idea.
Keen to join us.
Yeah.
You do one in the autumn as well, eh?
Yeah, we just have to do it at the festival.
Do you have a map?
Of the edible bike tour?
Yeah.
I do. Yes.
It's on the Climate Forum website.
It's on the Climate. It's not a accurate map.
You've got one.
Stylized map.
Oh,
We need
cool.
to make-
Website.
On the map.
Yeah, there is a hill.
Maybe a hill.
It's a very gentle.
Nice.
Just so are you planning on creating a new map or updating existing map, or is that still open question?
I suppose that the existing map would be the base information that is used, but I think that I'm kind of pulling this out of the conversations we've had. I think that the whole thing could probably be more effective with a new map, which would also contain new information. It would layers
More
of information.
layers.
There's only so far you can go updating the base map that already exists.
Right.
So I think it's probably most effective with a new map, but again, there is a point at which you don't want to reinvest loads of energy remaking something that's already semi-functional.
Yeah.
So I think we would have to look a little bit more in detail at how functional the base one can be.
Yeah. The new data would feed, I think, into the existing one because that's on top of the South maps, which is the council ones, and I think we would have to kind of give them that information back. But that just says there's an apple tree, there's a peach tree. It doesn't say.
But they'll pay some hosting.
Yeah.
You might want to think about projection as well, because there's a lot of new development where you can sort of think along the Mai Tai in places where more hubs or develop larger expansion anyway. That would be
that'd be
Future
cool.
planning stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was such a thing for a while to be planting these trees, but it seems to have dropped off.
So you want some sort of ongoing funding to keep the maps
Yes.
up to date.
So here in Golden Bay, we actually lost our open orchard. Like Rototai used to have a lot of beautiful fruit trees, and then by the council, they all got taken out, and now we all have the same species.
Yep.
The same, what is it, Aki. And another one as well. Where was the other one where they also took it out? Yeah, I'm just surprised that in Nelson that you actually draw even attention of the council with it.
Do you know why they were removed here?
Well, that they made them into areas where they would rather not have people. So it became more like a, I would say, what is it? Just a managed reserve by council.
They thought it was going to be more effort to manage them because that was the tending thing.
Does it potentially provide some habitat, some native habitat?
Yeah, could be because it's next to the estuary. That could also be. Yeah, it had beautiful peach trees. Amazing peach trees.
So apparently in the development, like what you're leading off of what you were saying, in new developments here, they are supposed to, like Rototai, just reminded me, Rototai in certain little areas where they're supposed to have a park. There's an area with a certain population, a developer, they're supposed to leave a place where there's a park. So there's technically a park down there, but instead of being on the flat, because they're mostly older people with kids, they decided to put it on the hill. But where they do new developments, there'll be parks. And so then you could be talking to the parks people and pitching, hey, based on all those reasons, you ought to contact us or involve us because you need to really buy your policies fulfill this criteria, and so keen to know where you're going to develop next, and that sort of thing. I guess that's why I was asking about the policy thing. That drives it.
Is that most of the questions in the room kind of drawn to a close?